Thank you guys for joining us here on The Growth Project. I am here with Danielle Williams. Danielle, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm excited. So let's dive into this. And what I want to do is really start, I think a lot of listeners, coming out of, the Olympics in Paris, they watch it and, you and I were talking about this and kind of joking about it, but it's such a spectacle and it's such a television show, right? Like sort of designed for viewers. So I want to get to the Paris Olympics, but I think it's going to be helpful to give our listeners a little bit of context, help them learn a little bit about you, even just the track and field. I think a little bit more in depth and the seasonality of it, like all these different things. So what I want to do is start with you becoming officially like I'm a professional athlete now. When was this? Take us back.
So yeah, this was not my, I wasn't one of those athletes that I'm going to be a professional athlete. I kind of just fell in my lap. So I graduated from college in 2014 and I had a pretty good collegiate career. And afterwards, my coach, Coach Graham, was like, I think you have what it takes to be at the next level. And it kind of just, he got with the agents and he talked to them and they agreed. And so I had a shoe company sign on, Adidas, they signed on. And that was at that moment when I signed a contract that I became a professional athlete.
Okay. So this is 2014. You mentioned college. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Johnson C. Smith. It's a Division II school in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. And so born and raised Jamaica?
Yes.
And came to the States just for college?
Just for college, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So now you come here, you have a good, college career. Coach Graham, who also is coaches at Clemson.
Yes.
So I've known Coach Graham for a number of years now myself. So you guys, make this decision. You're going to turn pro. And that first year or so, just what does that entail? What is that really like? To be a professional track athlete, like what does that mean?
I don't think it's any different from being a collegiate track athlete. The only difference is you just don't go to class and you have an agent who's responsible for getting you into meets because everything is handled through agents. And so the whole point of them is they're responsible for negotiating with the shoe companies because professional track is run by shoe companies. And they negotiate with the shoe companies to get you a contract and they negotiate with meet organizers to get you into meets. And the meets are usually overseas in Europe. And there are only 8 lanes, guys, and there are a lot of us. And so the better agent you have is usually good for you in terms of getting into meets. And so that first year, as an unknown person from a Division II school, because most of the track athletes are from Division I schools, I really didn't get into any meets. I mean, I wasn't a superstar coming out of a Division I school. So I wasn't able to get in any meets. I wasn't running super fast at the time. So most of my meets were in America, local, probably on the collegiate meets, running against collegiate athletes. And I went to 3 meets prior to the World Championships in 2015. And so I was just happy to be there. That was my second World Championships, actually. I went to the first one in 2013 when I was a junior in college. And again, that was, it was a good experience. I was very starstruck because I was seeing all these athletes who I grew up watching on TV and I wasn't prepared to be there at all. And so I crashed out in the semifinals. I ran a super slow time and I didn't make the finals. And so 2015 was my second time at the World Championships. And fresh out of college, again, I was just happy to be there. My only goal this time was to make it to the finals because the first time I didn't make it to the finals. So my only goal that year was to get to the final. And in doing so, I ran a personal best in the semifinals. And at that time, the way it was set up was that the finals was 90 minutes after the semifinals. So it was the same day, 90 minutes later. And that's kind of how my training was set up, to come back, short time and run fast. And I went into the finals, I was 21 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, just happy to be there. I'm like, okay, you made the finals, you ticked off, you achieved what you came here to do. Anything else is a plus. And so I was like, I can't lose. So I went to the finals and I ran the race of my life. I ran a personal best and I finished first. And it was like, I was in shock. And everybody called me like, oh my God, she shot the field. Who is she? Where did she come from? And I was like, I was just had nothing to lose and I just gave my all in that race.
So there's probably a really important lesson within that, right? Not setting any expectations, just trying to enjoy the experience and really just, like you said, I'm just going to give it my best effort and we'll see what happens. But pretty amazing, 21 years old, essentially ran just a handful of professional meets and now you're world champion.
Yes.
So from there, now potentially carrying the, I don't know, burden or now expectations start getting placed on you. I'm curious, what was that following year? Some of the ensuing years, what were they like?
So when in 2015, I think it was a great thing and it was a very bad thing because I wasn't prepared for winning. Like, I didn't know what I did to win. I was just running, just going out there and running. And so coming back in 2016, which was an Olympic year, I was trying to replicate what I did the year before, but I didn't know what I did. And so it was very tough because now you have this light placed on you. In 2015, no one is expecting anything of you. And then 2016 comes around, you're the world champion. People are looking at you now. And so I have the spotlight on me and I don't know how to handle it because I'm thinking, okay, I won. So now I have to go and win again. And that was just not the case. And then I had my agent at the time who's telling me, oh, we don't want to lower your value because your value is high right now. And so he's not getting me into meets because he doesn't want me to go to meets and lose and lower the value. And so 2015, by choice, not by choice, because I wasn't getting in any race and I had 3 races in 2016 by choice. They're just not letting me race, and the races that they're putting me in are races that they know that I'll win. And so my confidence was kind of teetering a lot that year because I was like, I should be winning, but at the same time, I am winning, but I'm not winning quality races. And so confidence was definitely shaken going into the Olympic trials for Jamaica because I was like, I haven't had a great season. I don't feel great in terms of like my preparation and mentally how I feel going into this race. But at the end of the day, I am a racer and I'm going to show up and I'm going to race. And so I went into, the Olympic trials as the world champion. I was threatened by all my competitors because they were running really well and I wasn't all season. And usually when I'm threatened, I run really well. And so I took that going into the Olympic trials, and the race went on and I got a great start and I was leading the race. It looked like all intents and purposes that I was going to make the Olympic team. And then middle of the race, I just fell. And that was like the end of it. And so that went from 2015, the year before, on top of the world, to 2016, nothing.
Like not even qualifying for the Olympic team. Yeah. And this would have been Rio?
Yes.
So, right?
Rio.
Yeah. Okay, so literally the pinnacle of the sport, year after year is world championships unless it's an Olympic year.
Yes.
So I go from the pinnacle down to like, now I don't even make the Olympic team.
No, I didn't even make the Olympic team.
I'm sure now as a 22-year-old, that was difficult.
Of course. Yes.
Okay, so talk me through then just the response from that, and then again, just kind of keep going a little bit with the timeline.
So that was the first failure, if you could call it failure, but that was the first time in my young career, and I'm talking like high school, college, and now professional, that I ever felt like I failed at something. And so I didn't handle it particularly well. I mean, I feel like I threw a tantrum. I was like a spoiled child. I stopped showing up to practice. And when I did show up to practice, I had like one race after the Olympic trials, or 2. And, coach he was like, yeah, this is your job now. You have to show up. You can't just, because you didn't make it, you just don't show up anymore. And at the time, my sister at the time, we were practicing together and she had made the Olympic team. And it was really difficult for me to handle that because all intents and purposes, I was doing a lot better than her. And so for it to happen that way, that she made it and I didn't, I didn't really handle it very well. And then that was the first time I realized that all this attention comes with the Olympic Games. Like nobody cares about track and field in the World Championship years, but during the Olympics, the news wants to interview you. And I saw all of this coming up, and we were at practice one day, and I remember in Charlotte, and the news station came out, and they were interviewing her, and then they wanted to interview me, like, how does it feel? Your sister's going to the Olympics. And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy for her, but it sucks for me. And so it was a really tough time that year. Like I said, that was the first time I really had to handle any true adversity in my young track and field career. And I don't think I handled it very well, but I needed that learning experience to push me through to the next season.
Yeah. And I think this is probably a good place to just pause and help people, like the seasonality of track, right? We were talking about this earlier. Especially in an Olympic year, for a lot of people, that's probably it.
Yes.
Like they'll shut it down after that. There may be a handful of meets. Back then, there may not even, was Diamond League even around then?
It was, yeah.
It was around then, okay. But there may be a handful of meets, but really early fall, like the season is officially kind of done.
Yeah.
And then is sort of your off season.
Yes.
Until you start probably ramping back up in winter, maybe December-ish.
No, it depends on when the season actually closes. So right now, the end of the season is September. So mid-September is the last races in the season. We only take, depend on who your coaches are, we only take max 6 weeks off.
Okay.
And so that 6-week break is going to take you, so that's September, that's going to take you through to end of October. So by November, you're starting back up.
And then meets would start back up though, probably
January.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so January indoor stuff starting up, right? And then you'll transition when spring rolls around to outdoor.
Yeah.
And if it's an Olympic year, obviously you're prepping for the Olympics, but every other year is a World Championship year, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what you're building toward.
Yes.
Okay. So just so everybody understands, I think just year after year as we talk about this, that's kind of the cycle of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, keep going. What's next?
So as a world champion in 2015, you get an automatic bye to the following World Championships would have been in 2017. And so I didn't have to go try out for the team. I was already going to be there. And by virtue of that, you have, so World Championships and Olympics, they take 3 per country to the championships. And as the reigning world champion, you get a bye, so your country gets to send 4 athletes. And that year, World Championships would have been in London. And yeah, it was a pretty good year. I was getting more meets. I was running decent times. It was, all intents and purposes, it was a very good season in terms of how I was running. I ran a personal best before the World Championships. I was in very good shape. And then I went to the World Championships in London. It was super cold. I don't know why. It's so crazy because the Olympics 2012 were in that same stadium, and it was super hot. I remember everybody talking, it was so hot. And then we come to 2017, and it's just cold all around. And that was a weird World Championships for Team Jamaica, because we went into the World Championships. We had the fastest 100-meter runner on the women's side. It was Usain Bolt's final year, and we just started having so many mishaps in that championships. And then I went in and I was like, all right, I'm going to turn it around. Like, I'm feeling good, I'm running well. I'm going to turn it around. I went to the heats and had a nice, easy qualifier, made it through. And then the semifinals, I remember it was different that year because for whatever reason, we had the heats and the semifinals on the same day. And it's never usually that way. You have the heats one day, and then you might have the semifinals and the finals the same day, but it's never heats and semis. So we had the heats in the morning, and then we had the semifinals in the night, and it was freezing. Like, I remember being in the call room that we have. It was where they gather us before we go onto the track, and they told us to take our clothes off, and we're in our competition gear, and I was just shivering. It was so cold. And then I went out there, and because it was so cold, I didn't run well. So I didn't make it to the finals. And of course, I was devastated because, I'm the defending champion. And I'm going in to defend my title, and I just didn't run well, and I didn't make it to the finals. And I remember I was so devastated. That was the second failure 2 years in a row, and it was just like, wow, this is hard. This is a lot harder than it was in college.
Yeah.
Because in college, I just showed up and I won. Anytime every championship, I showed up and I was at my best and I was winning. And then here I am. First year out of college, I showed up. It was easy. I won. And now 2 years back to back is just disappointment. Not making the team and not making the finals. And it was hard. It was super hard. So, started out on the upward trajectory, and now we're going downwards.
Okay. How did you respond in 2018?
So 2018 was an off year. So that's the year that we don't have any championships. So it goes World Championships, Olympic, World Championships, off year. And then you start back World Championships, Olympics, World Championships, off year. So 2018 was an off year in terms of World Championship, but we do have something that's called the Commonwealth Games, in which all the Commonwealth countries, which are countries that were colonized by the United Kingdom, they come together and they put on a games for the Queen. And so that was in Australia that year. I started that fall. I was injured. And so preparation really wasn't going well. I was injured. I had injured my hamstring running indoors, and Commonwealth would have been, because it was in Australia and the seasons are flipped, it would have been in March instead of in the summer. And so I really didn't know if I was going to make it there. I was injured, I said. I didn't have any competitions before that, but I went and I finished second. So not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a silver medal, so not too bad.
Do you think that's a product of like you were starting to learn from some of the failures?
Yes.
Like you were starting to figure it out and kind of put things together?
Yeah, absolutely. I was learning that, this professional athletics is it's going to be a lot harder than college, but you still have to show up because this is your job. This is what you get paid to do. And you don't get to, I didn't win last year, so I'm not going to show up this year. This is what pays the bills. And so you have to figure it out. And then I'm learning that the journey is not going to be how it was in college, where, it was easy, you show up, you won. This is literally the top percentage of the best in track and field. And everybody on this level is talented. Some of them are probably more talented than you. So you have to put in the work. And I was determined that, okay, I'm not going to be outworked. Like, I'm going to do everything that I could possibly do in training, just to know that I'm not going to leave anything to chance when I go into the competition. If you beat me, it's because you're just better than me, but it's not because I didn't put the work in.
Yeah. Okay. 2019,
that was probably the best year I've had as a professional athlete. Again, that year started off with an injury, a major injury. I hurt my ankle pretty badly, so I missed a big chunk of, the off-season preparation that I would have put in. And then once I started running, I just didn't lose. That entire season, I was just winning. Every race I went into, I was just winning. I was like, wow. And then all of that leading up to the World Championships, which was in Doha that year, which was a weird year because usually they're in September or August. This one was in October. And it wasn't early October, it was late October. And so we weren't used to that. And then it was in Qatar, which is in the desert, Middle East, and went into the World Championships as the favorite because, again, I was winning every race I went into 2019. I was in great shape. I had just set the Jamaican national record, which had stood for probably like 10 or 15 years before that. So I went in as a favorite, and then I finished third in the finals. And for me, I was disappointed because obviously you go to win and you go in thinking, okay, I beat everybody all year. What's going to be different? But then I went to Doha, and Doha is ridiculously hot. Like, it'll be 110 degrees at midnight. Whew. Yeah. And so I was losing. I sweat a lot. and I was losing so much weight each
Really?
day, and my body was just not recovering. At the time, I didn't know it. I was telling coach and I was telling the therapist, like, I just don't feel well. I'm so tired. Like, and they were like, your body feels good, your muscles feel good. I'm like, yeah, but I feel weak. And I think that definitely played a part into my performance, because I just wasn't recovering. But I went into the finals, and I raced badly. And I still came out with a bronze medal.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, though, so although you had learned some of the lessons from the failures, and it sounds like overall it's like, I'm starting now to think a little bit more like a professional,
Yes.
and taking it more serious, mindset's better, but there's still these nuances of just being a pro and traveling around the world.
Yes.
Right. And, understanding different tracks, different climates, like some of these little things, there were still plenty of lessons to be learned, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, there's always lessons to learn. No two seasons are the same. You just mentioned traveling the world. Majority of the time, I'm traveling by myself, so I'm figuring out, how to operate in countries that are largely not English-speaking countries, because most of the meets are somewhere in Europe. I'm figuring out how to operate alone. As someone that needs, as a hurdler, you kind of need a little assistance, because as much as you've done it for all your life, there's still things that coach will see that he'll be like, hey, you weren't doing this. And I'm like, really? I felt like I did it. And so you're trying to navigate all that on your own. You're trying to meet new people. And again, I didn't go to a Division I school, in which most of these other people went to, they know each other from competing at NCAAs and all that. I don't know them. And so it was a little difficult navigating that at first until you start meeting people and stuff. But it is always a learning curve, always a learning lesson, trying to figure things out. The climate, the food is always so different in Europe than it is over here. And a lot of that you just had to experience to know.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I didn't even, I guess realize, like, you were doing all of this by yourself.
Yeah.
Coach often not with you. Like, coach will set you, the training plan, right? And you're following it, and there's obviously communication, but you're doing all this on your own. Do you have a tally at this point? How many countries you've been to?
I want to say it's probably more than 30.
More than 30 countries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whew. All right, let's get back on track. So 2019, bronze medal, 2020, COVID.
Yeah.
So basically season wiped. Right?
Yeah.
When did you guys start gearing back up? And then Tokyo obviously shifted from 2020 to 2021.
COVID, that was March? And I still to this day feel like COVID was the worst thing that happened to my career, just because I had experienced a level of freedom that I didn't have since I started track and field. I mean, everything is scheduled, disciplined, you're practicing, you're eating, you're sleeping, and then COVID happened and that schedule just went out the window. I started staying up late, I'm eating cakes and pastries and chocolates, I'm just totally just enjoying not having to work out, because we don't know when anything is happening. I'm exploring. I mean, I'm going hiking. I've never hiked before, and I've discovered I don't like hiking. I'm traveling. I'm doing all these things, and then we're here, and all right, we got to get back in it. The Olympics is canceled, but it's coming back next year, and I'm like, I gotta go back. I'm having fun. I think we started practicing again in September, and at this point, I am overweight, which I've never been overweight in my life. I'm overweight, and I have to lose this weight and then try to refocus, get focused back on, getting ready for the Olympics. And that was tough, because usually, again, you have 6 weeks off from the end of the season before you start training again. This was from March to September.
You had 6 months off.
6 months off. My body was like, I was working out, obviously, in between, but it wasn't with the same intensity or mindset that, you got to keep in shape.
Yeah.
It was just to work out for working out's sake. And so getting back was, it was rough. If you've stopped working out for a while and you start back, It's rough.
Yeah, I think I can resonate with that. I'm sure our listeners can too.
Yeah, so, just getting back into the swing of things, it was tough. Prior to that, we train at Clemson. We usually lift at Clemson. And so now, after COVID, we were told you can't lift at Clemson anymore. And so we had to find a new weightlifting program, which was all the way out in Powdersville. So my routine kind of changed. I did everything in Clemson. And now I was finding myself, okay, after practice, after training for 3 hours on the track, I had to jump in my car and drive 45 minutes to the gym. And then that gym work routine, it was just not for me. So I remember I told you I was coming back, I was overweight. So I had to now try to put on muscle mass and all these things. And I just wasn't getting that at the gym. And so my body was breaking down and I kept getting hurt. So that entire year I got hurt probably like 3 or 4 times. And getting hurt is, especially when it's muscle tears, it's tough because then you're not trusting your body anymore. And you're in pain, and instead of focusing on the task or what you got to do, and you're thinking about the pain that you're feeling. You're wondering, is my body going to hold up? And so I was just, that year, 2021, going into the Olympics was just rough. That was the most injuries I've ever had in a single season. I lost confidence in my body. I lost confidence in my ability to just go out and perform. And I was weak because my weight program wasn't sufficient because it was a new program and I was just learning. He's learning my body, he's learning my strengths, and it was just a total miss. And so my body was weak, and then I went into the Olympic trials again, and this time I finished 4th. So top 3 goes, remember I told you top 3 goes, and so I finished 4th, so I was selected as an alternate. Now usually they don't take alternates to the Olympics. But by virtue of it was COVID and it was in Tokyo, they took an alternate because just in case somebody tested positive, the alternate would have been right there.
Yep.
So that experience was Olympics, but not Olympics. So,
right, because I mean, we're talking no fans.
No fans.
No Olympic Village.
No Olympic Village.
So in some ways, a little bit more like a conventional track meet because you're in hotels and that kind of thing, but very, very much not at all the Olympic experience,
Not
especially compared to like Paris, I'm sure.
I mean, I remember you had to wake up at every morning you wake up, you had to take a COVID test, and you had to stay in quarantine until the results came back, and it was quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, and so that experience, and even the difference between, I'm here and I know I could compete, right? But like I don't know for certain that I am competing.
Right.
I'm sure that probably had an influence just on the experience.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the best. The mindset was I knew I probably wasn't going to compete. Right. And so I didn't want to be there because I'm like, why do I have, it's a far travel to Tokyo. I'm like, I don't think I need to travel this far just to not compete. And I remember it was a back and forth with Coach Graham because it's like, I don't want to go. And he's like, no, but you must go because they told you that they selected you. You can't not show up. And I was like, I think I have the choice of not showing up. And he's like, no, you have to go. And so it was definitely not easy mentally dealing with that. I was there until the hurdles, the first heat of the hurdles, the first day the hurdles went off in the heat. That was as long as I was there. So I was probably there for a week. As soon as it was determined that I would definitely not be competing, I left.
Gotcha.
Because I just didn't want to be there to have to endure all of that. And so it definitely played a big part of my mindset that year because I was injured all along. I went to the Olympics, which wasn't the best experience as well because, I wasn't competing. I didn't really get to experience the whole Olympic thing. And to this day, I tell everybody's, oh, you're an Olympian now. I'm like, no, I'm not. To be an Olympian, you have to compete at the Olympics.
Right.
And I didn't compete at the Olympics. So 2021 was definitely, again, coming off of the high of 2019 to the low of 2021. But a lot of that was my fault because 2020, that COVID year, enjoyed my freedom a little bit too much.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, so 22, again, another opportunity to bounce back. What's the, give us the cliff notes of 22.
22 is a world championship year. Bouncing back from injury. Bounced back from injuries, changed my gym program. So now I'm in a brand new gym program. And it is just a lot in terms of, again, now everything was in Clemson. I was driving maybe 10 minutes a day from my house to the track, to the gym, and back home. Now everything is in Greenville. I'm driving an hour from the track to the gym. And at that point, I was also volunteering with the track team. And so I just had a lot on my plate. And I'm doing practice 3 hours on the track. Then I'm driving an hour, doing gym for 2 hours. Then I'm driving back to Clemson to help out with the track team. And so I had some very long days. And I think I was just burning the candle at both ends. And at some point in time, I had to stop and like something has to give because my body is not recovering. I'm not giving my body what it needs in terms of the recovery that it needs. And so I got injured again. And this time it wasn't as major an injury as 2021, but it took my body some time to recover. Went to the World Championships. I went to the Jamaican national trials and I made the team to the World Championships. And I went to the World Championships. And at this point, when I get to the World Championships, it doesn't matter what happened throughout the season. The only goal is to make the podium. And I went into the World Championships. This was in United States, by the way. The first time United States has ever hosted a World Championships.
In Eugene?
In Eugene.
Okay.
They did a terrible job. That's for another day. They did a terrible job compared to what we're used to when we go to the European countries. They had us in the dorms in Oregon.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so, okay. Got to the World Championships. First round, made it to the semis. Semifinals, we're there, and a world record is set. And that was just massive. Like a world record was set in the semifinals in the race that I was in. I was in the world record race, and I didn't set the world record, but it was just my good friend, Nigerian Toby Aminsan. She set the world record, and it was crazy just because I had seen her prior to that, and we had this wall that you sign, and she had wrote on it a world record holder, and I was like, if that's not manifesting. That I've seen, that is manifesting. But anyway, yeah, I made it to the finals, and the only plan I had was to make it to the final. But that year I was having a lot of problems with my technique, my race technique. So I would get a great start, and then by the time I get to hurdle 7, hurdle 8, I would start getting too close, and then I would probably hit it with my trail leg, and then I would start falling back. And so that was happening largely for the entire year. But anyways, I made it to the final, and I'm like, once I'm in the finals, I'm going to get a medal. Like every final that I've made to this point, I've gotten a medal. And so I'm going to get a medal. And yeah, I did not get a medal. Finished 6th. But when I watched back the race, every time I watch it back, I am leading that race up until I hit the hurdle. And I figured, okay, we have to fix that for 2023. Like this happened all year. We got to fix it for 2023. And that was my sole focus for 2023 because I figured if my race technique is so terrible, but yet still I am leading the entire field straight through hurdle 7, hurdle 8. If I can just get that sorted out, like nobody's going to beat me. Right.
So 2023 rolls around, and it sounds like you manifested that for yourself.
I guess so.
Right?
Yeah. So 2023 rolls around, World Championship year, and by virtue of it's not supposed to be a World Championship year, but because the calendar got messed up with COVID and everything, it's a back-to-back World Championship year. And the season's fine. I'm racing fairly well. I'm not winning, but I'm not losing. I'm not running fast, but I'm not running slow. It's a fairly good season. Went to the Jamaican World Championship trials, and I barely made the team. Barely, and I'm like, to this point, I just don't know what happened. I finished third, beat in the fourth place by 200ths of a second or something like that. And it was just like, wow, I barely made this team. And then after the trials, we're still racing on the circuit prior to the World Championships. And again, I'm running fairly well. I'm not running super fast, but I'm dropping times going into the World Championships. And then I went into the last couple training sessions before the World Champs. The game started. I was training with a Jamaican guy, and they run the 110. I run the 100s, but I was just killing him on every rep.
Really?
Yeah, and I just knew I was ready to go. And then I went into the heats, and I finished third. Made it to the semis, and top two comes out of each semis as an automatic qualifier, and then the next two are the fastest losers. I went into semis. I finished third again. I'm like, what is happening? Mind you, I'm running faster each time, but I'm just not used to it.
And you're qualifying just on time at this point.
This point. Yeah. And so, I made it to the finals, and I'm in lane 2, which, again, is not a lane that I've ever been in the finals. I'm always in the middle of the track. And I'm in lane 2. I'm out there on an island alone. And I remember before we went into the call room, coach was like, this was similar to 2022 when, I'd get great starts and I would just start falling back. But it wasn't as bad as 22. And coach said, all year long, you've been getting out on them and they've been catching you at the end. They're not going to catch you this time. And I just walked in. I was like, they're not going to catch me this time. We're going to play catch me if you can, and you're not going to catch me. And so, the gun went, and I just I'm going to put this entire field under pressure, and you're going to have to catch me. If you catch me, by the time you catch me, it's going to be too late. And that was my mindset. And yeah, they just didn't catch me.
So we go from starting your professional career, 2015, world champion. You walked us through the timeline, ups, downs. Yes. Right. One of the things too I wanted to point out or made sure I commented on, just from my perspective, having worked all this time over the years with so many athletes, professional athletes, it's amazing how in tune you guys are with your body.
Yes.
That is a really big deal.
Yes.
And I want to highlight that because I think what you know and understand, and so many others do, people we've had on the podcast, even your body's your livelihood. Right. And the relationship that you develop with it and how well you know it is a really big deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody knows our bodies better than
right. So for you to describe just some of the injuries and just I can feel I'm not quite right and so on. Again, we can talk about mindset related to that separate, but it just matters a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So the up and downs of injuries and COVID and all this kind of stuff, but then to come back in 23, win another world championships, and now setting the stage to go to Paris in 24.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to fast forward a little bit here for the sake of time. In just a sentence or two, describe the Paris Olympic experience.
Paris was interesting. There was a lot of stuff that was outside of my control that I didn't envision going in.
Yeah. And some of that is, I think some of the stuff our listeners at this point are probably familiar with just from seeing on, social media, and it was documented. Olympic Village.
Yeah.
Chaos. Disorganized.
I wouldn't say chaos. I would say disorganized. I don't think the French Olympic Committee and everybody that, was involved in all that, I didn't think they quite understood the magnitude of what was going on and how many athletes and officials and all those people they'd have to service in the Olympic Village. So I think they were underprepared or overwhelmed. Yeah.
Right. I mean, some of these examples that you were sharing with me, something as simple as an athlete, and you actually talked about this earlier, related to World Championships in Qatar, but just you need to be hydrated. Right? Water is one of the most important resources for an athlete, any athlete.
Yes.
And yet that seemed to be something that was way, way too difficult to find.
Way too difficult to find in the Olympian Village. So like at the tracks, they would have like fridges stocked with water and Powerade and what you need. But at the Olympic Villages, so they have vending machines that are located at specific locations by where the athletes are sleeping. And you could go down and they give you a Coca-Cola card thingy that you put on the vending machine and you get one water. So you know, as athletes, we need more than one water. I mean, I would like to have a case of 24 right by my bed because I'm going to blow through that within 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you go to the vending machines and they are unstocked, they're empty. And as soon as they fill them up, again, there's so much athletes in the village, they're empty as they fill them up. And then they're telling you that, you know, if you have a water bottle, there are water filling stations that you can fill. And we are lazy athletes. And we are not going to, especially if you're on the 6th floor of your dwelling, you're not going to come down every 20 minutes to fill your water bottle. It's just you trying to rest and save your legs for your competition. And so just things like that, I think they weren't prepared or they didn't understand, you know, how that would have affected athletes. Even just going to the dining hall, and we laugh every time because they had like steps going to the dining hall that I don't think they thought would have been as popular as it was, because they, in order to get to the entrance of the dining hall, there was a way that you could have taken, but you would have had to pass the steps to go all the long way. Mm-hmm. We're lazy again. We're not gonna pass the steps to go the long way to get to the village. So that poor steps, they were so overused. Oh my gosh, the lines just to get up and down were backed up. I don't think they thought, hey, athletes are going to use these steps.
Right. Okay, so, well, spoiler alert here. All right, you end up winning your heat, right? Move on to semifinals. Unfortunately, clip a couple of hurdles, right? Don't end up qualifying for finals. So at this point, obviously, like, your Olympics is over. But I'm curious, I guess, as we kind of push to a close here, what's the mindset coming out of it? Like, how do you move forward?
Obviously not the result I went in expecting as world champion. You know, you're expecting that at the very least you're going to make the finals. And once you're in the finals, it's a podium finish. And so that didn't happen. So the mindset now is salvage the season. Like, I know I'm in great shape. And I didn't get to showcase that, all the hard work I put in, you know, the type of form that I'm in. I didn't get to showcase that. And so now the mindset has to be, I'm going to finish the season strong. And I'm going to show that performance at the Olympics, it was just an outlier. It wasn't me. I didn't get to show what I'm capable of. And I have to show that before the season's over.
And so this season, as you're describing it, and you know, people can tune into this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But it's called Diamond League.
Diamond League, yeah.
Right, primarily run in Europe. Solely in Europe. But you'll have 5 events, is that correct?
5 events left. So the Diamond League is the professional circuit for track and field racing. There are 14 meetings. It starts in April and it ends in September with the final. And you accumulate points at every meet you go. And then so the top 8 athletes with the top 8 points, they make it to the finals. And so it starts in April, finishes in September. It pauses during the Olympics. And so now we're getting ready to pick up back next week. It starts up again next week.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Danielle, I appreciate your time. You know, lots of cool insight. Listeners will probably take plenty from it. And even just getting a little bit of an inside look into the lifestyle and, you know, what it's like to be a professional track and field athlete, I think is awesome. If people did want to follow you, are you active on social channels? This is your opportunity to go ahead and plug yourself if you want.
Yeah, so I'm only active on Instagram, original_ants. You can go ahead and follow me there. I don't post a lot. Now, I have somebody who manages the social media page because I'm terrible at that. But yeah, you could see insights and training and competition on my Instagram page. That's the only social media that I have. And as for the races, they're all on Peacock this year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, Peacock shows all the Diamond Leagues this
Awesome.
year, and next year it's gonna move to Flow Track or something like that. So yeah, they show all of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thank you.